Last week, my kids and I went fishing at one of the small lakes near Dispatch's HQ here. Those lakes have a lot of small perch, and they're stocked a few times a year with trout. So we were fishing off a pier, and not far out into the lake is a submerged log with one branch that sticks, 2 or 3 feet out of the water. Now, one thing I've noticed this year is that there's a bird, kind of a duck-like bird, that often stands on top of that exposed branch with its wings outstretched. And this day was no different. Unperturbed by us fishing relatively close by, it perched there several times, would leave for a bit, and then return, repeating this cycle. That bird was a double-crested cormorant. And I am your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara. And this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. Cormorants are water birds. Worldwide, there's 40 species swimming around. Double-crested cormorants are widely distributed across North America, found in nearly every river, lake, and coastal area from Alaska's Aleutian Islands down to Florida and Mexico and all points in between. Now, while I described it as duck-like, it's more accurate to say it's loon-like or even grebe-like. In case you've forgotten, grebes are another aquatic bird that I covered in episode 84. Like loons and grebes, cormorants are diving birds. Also, cormorants are bigger than ducks, or grebes for that matter. They're about 2.5 to 3 feet long, 70 to 90 centimeters, and weigh 2.5 to 5.5 pounds, 1.2 to 2.5 kilograms. Now, they're not flashy, at least not from a distance. Adults are kind of a brownish black overall, but they do have a patch of yellow-orange skin on their face, right at the base of the bill. Their eyes are a bright aquamarine, and the inside of their mouths are blue. During the breeding season, adults develop small crests called nuptial crests of stringy feathers just behind and above the eyes. So, 2 of them, a double crest. Hence the name double-crested cormorant. The crests are white in Alaskan cormorants and black in birds from other areas. They have small heads on long kinked necks and thin, strongly hooked bills, roughly the same length as their head. They're not renowned for their calls, which is kind of a deep guttural grunt. When they swim, they sit low in the water. Often only their neck and head is visible. Double-crested cormorants are gregarious colonial birds that seek out bodies of water big enough to support what is almost an all-fish diet, though they will eat insects, crustaceans, or amphibians on occasion. But that said, they might roost and form their breeding colonies on smaller lagoons or ponds and then fly up to 40 miles, 65 kilometers, to a more suitable feeding area. When they fly, they tend to fly low over the water, with their bills slightly tilted upward, and often leave the colony in a long single-file line. When they come in for a landing, cormorants puff out the orange skin on their neck, and after touchdown, give a little ritual hop. There's just something endearing about that, am I right? Now, cormorants frequently, but don't always, nest in trees. And again, these breeding colonies are often found in clusters of trees in or at least near water, and they tend to return to the same spot year after year. So after a while, what happens is the mass of cormorant guano kills the trees, which may in turn lead them to fall, at which point the cormorants will either find a new site for the colony or just start nesting on the ground. They also nest on cliffs, rocks, or reefs. In addition to places to fish, cormorants need places to perch. Their main 2 activities are fishing and resting, with more than half the day spent on the second one. I mean, come on, that's not a bad life if you can get away with it. Dead trees, the masts of ships, rocks, or, like I observed, a long branch sticking out of the water from a submerged log. I've seen them perched on top of streetlights, too. You see, strangely, for a bird that hunts by diving, cormorants are not fully waterproof. They have less preen oil than other birds, so their feathers can get soaked rather than shedding water like a duck's. Now, while it sounds counterintuitive for a diving bird, it's thought that this is an adaptation that helps cormorants hunt underwater more effectively. Wet feathers probably make it easier for cormorants to hunt by using their agility and speed. But it also means that after diving, they need to spend a fair amount of time standing with their wings outstretched to let them dry. And this drying time also gives them a chance to rest and digest. Cormorants have impressive fishing techniques. They dive and chase fish underwater with powerful propulsion from their webbed feet, using the hooked tip of their upper bill to grab onto slippery aquatic prey. They can dive nearly 25 feet, 7.5 meters deep, and stay submerged for over a minute. Smaller fish might be swallowed while the bird is still underwater, but larger prey are brought to the surface. And when a cormorant happens to catch something like a crayfish, they display a bit of flair, hammering it on the surface of the water to shake the legs off, then flipping it up in the air and catching it head first for easy swallowing. It's kind of like when the chef at the hibachi tosses you a shrimp to catch in your mouth. Undigestible parts, like bones, are regurgitated in a pellet. It occurred to me that owl pellets are well known, probably because of their size and the ease of actually finding them in the wild, but regurgitating pellets is a behavior common in almost any bird that eats vertebrates. So let's circle back to nesting. Nests are built in the center of the colony first and then expand outward. To attract a mate for the season, a male cormorant chooses a nest site, then stands with his breast down and bill and tail up, showing off the crests on his head and the bright colors of his neck and eyes, grunting and slightly waving his outstretched wings. When a female arrives, the male greets her by opening his mouth into a gape, showing off the blue inside. Sexy! If one cormorant encroaches on the space of another, for example when competing for nest sites, the two will face off, stretch their necks and open their mouths wide while shaking their heads and hissing at each other. Now, both of the mates work on the nest, but they each have a specific job. The male brings most of the nesting material, and the female does the building. Nests are constructed mostly of finger-sized sticks, along with some seaweed and lined with grass, but they frequently incorporate trash and debris like rope, deflated balloons, fish nets, and other trash. And it's not unusual for the nest to even include dead bird parts. Home sweet home, I guess? Large pebbles are occasionally found in cormorant nests, which the cormorants treat like eggs. Also, breeding cormorants will readily steal nesting material from unguarded nests nearby. Now, the nests are anywhere from 1.5 to 3 feet, so 0.3 to just under 1 meter in diameter, and 4 to 17 inches, or 10 to 43 centimeters high. Ground nests tend to be wider than tree nests, but tree nests tend to be deeper. Clutches can range from 1 to 7 eggs. They're incubated for about a month, and the chicks are altricial at birth, featherless and with their eyes closed. The parents care for the chicks for another month after hatching, and then send them on their way. Since double-crested cormorants' nests are often exposed to direct sun, the adults shade the chicks and bring them water, pouring it from their mouths into the mouths of the chicks. If the nest is on the ground, young cormorants frequently leave their own nest while their parents are out hunting and congregate into groups with other youngsters. These groups are called creches, but they go back to their own nests to get fed. Double-crested cormorants might raise 2 broods per year. Average lifespan in the wild runs around 6 years, but the oldest known wild double-crested cormorant lived to be at least 23 years, 8 months. It was banded in Oregon in 1997 and spotted by a birdwatcher in Washington in 2021. Now, in the 1800s and early 1900s, cormorants were frequently hunted, and their numbers declined, like so many other animals, with Western settlement. And in the 1960s, cormorant numbers further declined due to the use of DDT. But since the 70s, cormorant populations have grown steadily, even explosively in some places. For example, in the Great Lakes, double-crested cormorant populations doubled in as little as 5 years. This may be due, at least in part, to the introduction of a small non-native prey fish, a species of herring called an alewife, which has provided optimal feeding conditions and led to good breeding success. And because double-crested cormorants eat other species of fish besides alewives, they've been accused of contributing to the decline of some sport fish populations in the Great Lakes and other areas. Now, I find it kind of ironic that humans are responsible for introducing the alewife, which made the Great Lakes a great habitat for cormorants, and then humans get all upset about cormorants catching the fish they want to catch. So humans are mad at the cormorants for a problem that was created by humans? They're also considered pests to aquaculturists, fish farmers, because their predation on fish ponds can cause thousands of dollars in losses to farmers. Though I would posit that there are probably some pretty easy ways to keep cormorants out of your fish farm. But because they've recovered significantly and the potential problems they can cause, double-crested cormorants are controlled in some areas through either culling or what's called egg addling, which is when fertilized eggs are prevented from developing but left in the nest to prevent the birds from just laying more. Alrighty then, there was another bird, the kingfisher, that I was thinking about including in this episode, but you know what? I think I'm going to save that one for another time and wrap this one up right here. If you want to support the podcast, go for it. Here's some ways to do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and with 3 paid months, you get some really nice Dispatches from the Forest merch. Find all the details at patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest. You can donate through PayPal using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com, which is also the best way to contact me if you have a question, comment, or suggestion for a future episode. If you just want to send a check, that's not a problem either. Email me and I'll let you know what my mailing address is. You can donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. And then go check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatchesfromtheforest. Click on products and find something cool that you like. Finally, follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.